The playoffs, Peyton Krebs, Vinnie Hinostroza, the Hino Hive, all that ahead here on today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast.
You're Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Sabres your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. Joe DiBiase at Sneaky Joe Sports, Jordan Hansgen at JR Hansgen. We're going to talk some more about Peyton Krebs and Vinnie Hinostroza today on the show. Our exit interviews for them, looking back on their seasons, looking ahead on what's to come for a young player that maybe we still want to label a prospect and a guy that's going to be a free agent. So it'll be interesting to talk about those two. The playoffs keep rolling, though, and I keep losing money betting against the New York Rangers.
Yeah, sounds about right. I lost
Rangers?
my team. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. I would just start betting Avalanche. Just hammering the Avalanche, right?
That seems smart. They are a machine. They should win the cup, right? They should win the cup.
Especially if gosh, every time I say the Rangers aren't going to win, they're going to keep winning.
Same.
Yeah. But like I think the Avalanche are the best team.
Is there a comparable team in the Final Four that you could say, if when the Sabres get good, this is the model that they're going to be? Or are they not like any of these teams, you think, when they get good?
I think they are similar to none of these teams. Maybe the Rangers.
Carolina was the team I kept thinking of for them.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty good. The goaltending is similar. Not great.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I could see that. Because the Sabres are not going to be built on star power. When you think about it. Now, defensively, like Slavin could be considered like an Owen Power type guy or something like that. But they don't have like superstars, but they got a pretty good team all around.
Yeah, you can't say oh, they're gonna be like Colorado when they're good. Just give me a break. It's like the fastest team we've ever seen.
Or Tampa, yeah.
And Tampa, right? They don't have the goalie. They don't have the guy that's like, oh, they're gonna have a Vasilevsky. They're gonna have a Shesterkin. So Carolina fit because they just got Freddie Anderson in free agency, and like he was great, and he didn't play in the playoffs, but he was great. But it's kind of like plug and play type of style in that. And maybe the Sabres have a Shesterkin. Maybe Levi is that. Maybe Luukkonen's that. But you can't bank on them having a top 5 goalie in the world at the moment. Like, well, hopefully. We'll see. But they're not there yet. Yeah, I think Carolina fits. The blue line. Yesterday's show, I talked a little bit about Lawrence Pilut. The rumor that he wants to return to Buffalo and resume his NHL career. Before we get into the stuff we had pre-planned for today's show, any reaction to Lawrence Pilut? Any memories of his 2-year stint here?
Memories, no. But yeah, like I'd be happy for him to come back. I mean, we could always use more competition, more players. I think that's definitely good news. It's definitely good news. But I mean, I don't expect anything out of him.
Mm-hmm. Third pair defenseman is what I'm thinking. Of course, it's another left shot defenseman. Is everyone a left shot now? Is that a thing? Like, I know I'm a lefty. I'm on my stupid roller hockey team we play on Monday nights. 5 of the 6 of us are lefties. Is that a thing? Are more kids
wild.
growing up lefty?
I think that's more surprising than the Sabres having no right-handed defenseman.
You think
that your roller hockey team only has one right-handed shot?
Only one lowly right-hand shot.
That's wild. Yeah. That is wild. Yeah.
Is this a coincidence or more kids growing up lefties?
My thought was like, are there more like, does every right-handed player that's good at hockey want to play forward? Like, that's what I wonder. Okay. I don't know. Like, it's weird. I don't get it. I don't get it at all.
Yeah.
I think it's just chance.
Okay.
Of life.
Yeah.
If I had to sum it up to one, if I had to give one thing to blame.
All right, well, let's jump into our exit interviews for today's show. We'll get to Peyton Krebs a little bit later on, save him for the back half. I think he's probably the more interesting of the two players here. Not that the first player here is not interesting, because he is a free agent. And the Sabres, by not trading him at the deadline, maybe gave the indication that they want to bring him back. But the lineup is going to be tough to make because it's getting crowded, especially with Jack Quinn and JJ Peterka on the way up. Vinnie Hinostroza is who we're going to talk about today. And I know you're a big Hinostroza guy, the Hino Hive. Looking back on his season, we weren't really expecting much, but I think that's as good of a player you could have asked for a vet minimum contract like that.
Yeah, for sure. I think with him, ideally, he's your like sub-in guy. Like the guy that goes in when somebody's hurt. Like if you're a great team, that's probably where a guy like Vinnie Hinostroza is. But for the Sabres, like I don't think you could do much better than him as like a bottom six player. Given their current state. Now it is going to be tough for him. He's got to play against guys that have expectation around them and guys that have really done it all in Rochester and look good. So like he might be the type of guy that gets just bypassed by more talent. But still, like he's a guy you want around. And if somebody gets hurt, say JJ Peterka gets hurt or Quinn gets hurt or somebody, like I could go through like 5 games with Vinnie Hinostroza filling the spot.
Yeah,
I think that seems like his end role when the Sabres are a good team.
Do you think he's too good for that? He's scored 13 goals in 62 games, and the numbers were good when he was playing with skilled players. So the guy he played the most minutes with on the season, amazingly, was Cody Eakin, who he saw horrific goal scoring numbers, scoring chance numbers with. But then Peyton Krebs right after that, Jeff Skinner is up there. Tage Thompson even up there a little bit. Kyle Okposo, like all the guys that had good offensive numbers this year, he played well with. Cousins too, he thrived off playing with. So is he too good for that? Because the question will become, will he sign up for that? But I guess that I'll pose that to you. Does Vinnie Hinostroza have enough power to command where he goes, or does he just take the first contract the Sabres would offer him?
I think I guess like the easy answer is like it depends, but I can't imagine he would have a better opportunity in many other places.
Mm-hmm.
Like he would have a good opportunity in like Arizona.
But who wants
like
that?
besides
Who
that,
wants
like
that?
Yeah, besides that, like I think the Sabres are as good of a chance as he has as any. I didn't mean it to be like a slight. It's just like the reality of his situation, and it's still better than most teams that he would play for.
Mm-hmm. I think, by the way, he to me is the new modern day bottom 6 winger.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't need my John Haydens. They're just lumbering around out there running into things and all physicality because he ran into the boards and missed the hit. Like I don't need that. Hinostroza, that's the new bottom 6 guy. He's small, 5'10", 177, but skating, like speed, skating, can chip the puck in the back of the net, responsible defensively, can penalty kill, and like can carry the puck through the zone. I like him as, even if it's not going to be him specifically playing in the Sabres bottom 6 going forward, I like players like him playing my depth roles.
Yeah, I agree. And what I was gonna say is like when you brought up the question of like, I mean, he did play well with good players. There's no doubt about it. I guess the question would be like, what do you expect like Quinn to do with the same spot? Right.
More.
Right.
More is the right answer. That's right.
Right. So that's just where like it's like potential, right? You're weighing potential. Like Hinostroza, it's probably gonna be that. Like his best year may be like 20 goals. Like, but that's solid. That's great. And like he's the type of guy you do not want to get rid of. Like you don't want to let a Vinnie Hinostroza walk out the door.
Right.
But yeah, it could be a season where like he starts out maybe in the lineup and then falls out of it. But somebody's hurt all the time. Like Vinnie Hinostroza could end up being like that guy and play like 70 games.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. So
someone's always hurt. That's right.
Right.
His career high, by the way, you're right about there. His career high to this point in his career, he's 28 years old. Arizona in 2018-19, in 72 games, he had 16 goals and 23 assists for 39 points. So if you were Kevin Adams and you're going to the negotiating table, what's your contract offer to Hinostroza? What is the highest you would go? Term, money, like what are you thinking for him? Short term? I can't imagine very long term. Like what's the max? 3
Maybe
years?
Like 3 years, maybe like $3 million tops.
3 mil? I like that. 3 years, 3 mil would be like the highest I think I'd want to go.
When do these players start saying like I know you got to get to that floor?
Does he counter with 1 year, 13 million? Give me it all 1 year. We'll get you to the floor, baby. Let's get you to the floor.
They'll throw him out of the room.
I'll say this last thing about him. He just strikes me as the type of guy that if he leaves Buffalo, he's just going to end up in Pittsburgh on Crosby's left wing scoring 25 goals.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
He does fit like the Kunitz like mold.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not that good, but I get to play with this guy, and so I'm going to score like 30 goals.
That was Evan Rodriguez this year, right?
Yeah.
Like he's got that in him. All right, so Hinostroza, we both like the idea of wanting to re-sign him for a depth role. Not as impactful a role he played this past season because, again, he played a lot with Dylan Cousins. I think we'd want to see a little bit better of a line mate for Cousins, but that doesn't mean we don't want to see Hinostroza on the team going forward. But he is a free agent, and he will be someone to keep an eye on when free agency hits in just under a month. We'll talk about Peyton Krebs when we come back, looking back on his season and looking ahead for the Sabres prospect, if it's okay to still call him a prospect. He's still young enough. That's coming up here in the Locked On Sabres podcast. I want to remind you that we're brought to you by betonline.net. Need to find out who you want to bet on? BetOnline.net, your number one source for all your betting stats and information, all the latest developments, news, and odds. This year's basketball championship matchup, the NHL's conference finals, Major League Baseball, and of course, all the latest fighting news from MMA and UFC to boxing. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information. Head to their website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. We're also brought to you by rockauto.com. Listen, inflation is out of control. Gas prices are out of control. Chicken wing prices are out of control. You're spending $16 for a single order of wings right now. Any chance that you get to save money is one you should take. And you can do that at rockauto.com, where you could spend 30%, 50%, or 100% less for the same parts from a chain that you would get from a chain store or a car dealership. I've mentioned the story a couple times now that a couple months ago I needed new windshield wipers. I went into 3 chain stores. None of them had it. And I ended up paying half the amount in rockauto.com that I would have paid in the chain store part if they had it. And I did it in 2 seconds on my phone. Should have done it from the first point. Go to rockauto.com right now. See all the parts available for your car or truck and write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. Joe DiBiase and Jordan Hansgen here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. Free and available wherever you get podcasts. We're also on YouTube. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Peyton Krebs, he ends up getting in how many games with the Sabres? 48 games, 7 goals, 15 assists for 22 points. Then he goes down to Rochester and he has 10 assists in, I believe, 12 games. No goals, but amazingly, no goals, but 10 assists in 12 games in the playoffs for the Amherst. Played really well for them, set up some important, crucial goals. A lot of them seem to be to Arttu Ruotsalainen in the Amherst postseason. Really showed off his playmaking skills, as he did at times here for the Sabres. The advanced numbers are not good for Krebs. That was one area where there might be cause for concern, but young player, 38% expected goals for. That was one of the lowest marks on the Sabres this season. But I will say that kind of like Hinostroza, when he got playing with better line mates like Dylan Cousins, especially in the blue line, when he's playing with Dahlin, when he's playing with Tuck and Asplund, his numbers are through the roof. But everybody else, they're kind of low. A lot of Anders Bjork in there. Middlestat, the numbers weren't great. So first season with the Sabres, what's your takeaway on Peyton Krebs? Did you come away impressed? Is impressed the right word to use?
I would say there's like moments that I was really impressed with him. I didn't know what to expect with him. I think that there was expectation just because of the trade he was involved in. But I thought as the season went on, he got better and better. Especially with like when he plays with Tuck. I think that was by far his most impressive moments. Yeah, like I think that it was a success. Like I wouldn't look down. I don't think the numbers necessarily speak to it. Like I think I remember when he first showed up, it was like, he's not really ready. And then he went down and then he came back up. And then he was, I thought, a lot more effective. And I think they gave him more opportunities to be effective. And I think playing with Rochester, that was a great move by the Sabres too, because it allowed them to kind of see him play with some of those guys. Like even Arttu Ruotsalainen, I think, is competing for a spot again. I don't know what and like if say he and Krebs like look really good together, like I could see that being a factor in there too. Like I think that the Sabres have just a very interesting camp coming up. Possibly the most interesting they've had in a long time.
Yeah. By the way, I flipped the games and the assists on his Amerks totals in the playoffs. He had 11 assists in 10 playoff games. No goals. What a stat line. 0 goals, 11 assists in 10 games played in the Amerks playoffs. The other question about Krebs from this past season is center versus wing. His production was a lot better coming from the wing than it was from center. So are we at a point where we're ready to give up on the idea of him as a center in the name of getting better production and trying to make the playoffs next year? Or should we still be in the finding out if he could be a center phase at the beginning of next season?
I think you could definitely like still work to find out. I think you're kind of seeing what they all work, like how they all work together. So what, like our centers right now, we got Tage, Cousins, Asplund.
And even Asplund, as I talked about last night, played mostly on the wing last year.
Okay.
So I want to see if he could do it. Middlestat. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, I mean, I think Middlestat and Krebs can battle it out for that, or whoever they like, whoever they think is better suited for it. My gut instinct says that Krebs would be better at it.
Just because the playmaking, yeah. You would think he's perfect for that,
right? And then like I know our take on Asplund. We want him to be the fourth line center, ideally. Yes. But yeah, like I think that's interesting. But that's what this is like a great year for that. Like I know we want them to be like competing for a playoff spot, and that's like we were tired of losing. But this is also like still a year of like see what we got with these young guys, more so. Because we're gonna have probably like 2 or 3 more added to the mix. So it's still gonna be like there's still gonna be some learning curves. I don't expect the Sabres, kind of like this year. I don't expect the Sabres to be like hitting their stride until like game like 20 or 30.
Yeah, they're in a good place too. When like this is not like when Eichel and Reinhart showed up where it was like, all right, kids, like if we're gonna make the playoffs, it's up to you. Like all on your shoulders. Whereas, especially with Jack Quinn and JJ Peterka ready to show up, and you've already got Thompson and Cousins and Tuck, like you got all these other guys. Krebs, you want him to take another step forward, but it's not. What do I want here? It's not
paramount.
To say that he has to be great next year for them to be a playoff team. But what do we think for his ceiling? Like, do we not know? Or is it too early to make a judgment?
70 points, maybe? Like
70 points.
I think ceiling, like he'll be like 25 goals, like
45, 50 assists.
44, yeah.
Yeah, I think I see that for him as well. The other place I'd like to see more out of him is the power play. Because that's where he was thriving with the Amerks, where the cross ice passes, saucer passes through 2 sticks to get it onto Ruotsalainen's stick, who was kind of the main shot on the Amerks power play. Get the puck to Ruotsalainen on a one-timer, cross ice, and Krebs was doing awesome at that.
So he would be playing like one of those corners of the umbrella, right? Like sides. Yeah, like kind of where like Jack was.
Yeah, kind of where Jack was. but maybe like Olofsson on the other side and like trying to get him the one-timer off. I'd never loved Tage on that corner because I think his shot is hard, but man, it's just so
I like
inconsistent.
Tage in the middle, like to be honest.
Me too.
Like, middle spot.
Like the
Middle,
like the
high slot. Yeah, like the high
Yeah.
slot.
High slot, tuck maybe in front of the net, and then you
Just
got
because of the
Krebs,
shot,
Olofsson.
like Tage can like
Yeah.
rip that off like a little pass.
Right, and like the little wrist shot. I like the little quick wrist shot in the high slot better than his one-timer. So Krebs doesn't have the shot at all. So putting him on that corner, like you're kind of giving up on him scoring from there. But again, I think that the value of that cross ice pass on the power play, I'd like to see him get worked into that a little bit more next season. But overall, I thought pretty good, and enough to where like we're happy with the Eichel trade at this point, and he's a big reason for that. Tuck is probably a bigger reason for it. But in the first round pick ending up 16th is another reason for it. But Krebs doing what he did is part of the equation of why we feel good about the Eichel trade right now. And I think that's it. I think we covered it on him. There's no contract thing to talk about with him, right? Because what do we got? Two more years of his entry level contract. One this next coming year, and then one more year after that. So way too early to even begin thinking about that. All right, 21 years old, Peyton Krebs. Who do we want to talk about next? We're almost done with the forwards.
We could probably finish out the forwards next.
Yeah.
Jorgensen's.
Just do it like a grab mishmash of like the bottom tier forwards. Like
because
Bjork.
Like some of these are pretty easy, I think. Like I don't think we need to take a lot of time on some of them.
Maybe what we'll do next show, we'll split it. Half the time we'll spend on like Gergensons and Bjork and Eakin, like the guys that there's not really much to talk about. And the other half we should probably spend on Victor Olofsson. We've not talked about yet. And he's a restricted free agent. He is arbitration eligible. He is a little older than a lot of these other guys. He's 26. He might be an interesting guy to talk about. So we'll finish off the forward group. Then we'll get into the defensemen. And once we're done with that, because there's fewer defensemen obviously to get through, we'll full speed ahead to the NHL draft and free agency as we kick it into high gear here in off-season mode on Locked On Sabres. So thanks everybody for listening today. Hit the like and subscribe button on YouTube. We would really greatly appreciate it. You have no idea how much that actually helps just doing the stupid little hit the button thing. So appreciate that. At Sneaky Joe Sports, at JR Hansgen, at Locked On Sabres to follow us on Twitter. And thanks for making us your first listen every day. Now go make your second listen Locked On NHL. Locked On NHL, covering the playoffs like no other. Hear the latest news and opinions from local experts every Monday through Friday. It is free and available wherever you get your podcasts.